We're going to start with the Preach one. Should MMO add-ons be banned?
How about now?
Let's see here. I'm checking the volume. Is Preach in love with add-ons? Is that what that's supposed to be? Dude, that is a disgusting rating UI. Look at this shit.
I prefer you with less add-ons.
Oh, this is the scene from fucking X-Men. I want the real Mystique, right? The real Mystique.
I said less add-ons. Perfection.
Ah! Dude! Chat bubbles! Chat bubbles! That's an add-on!
Add-ons, add-ons, add-ons. Everybody's got an opinion these days on add-ons, haven't they? It's been an argument that has been brought up to the fire ever since the last Race to World First in Sepulchre, as people find it outrageous, the amount of add-on use, certainly in World of Warcraft, that is utilized in order to make fights easier. And
Let me just say something out real quick. A lot of people use add-ons instead of thinking for themselves about a specific mechanic. And this is one of the things that upsets me, is that a lot of people say something like, well, if I use an add-on to do a call out, it's basically the same as having a reliable raid leader doing the call out. I disagree, because an add-on will call something out and it will call it 100% reliably every single time. It'll never fail. Doesn't even have to think about what is going to happen. It's just going to give you the solved thing. So like, for instance, if you're solving a mechanic like P4S where the boss does abilities that demand you to move in a certain cardinal direction really, really fast. If you don't, you're going to get killed or debuffed or maimed or, something really bad. And the developers, when they're working on the fight, they take into consideration the time that it takes for each individual to look at the boss mechanic, read the boss ability, which will be like eastward shift or something like that. So the boss is going to move east. Also look at the boss, see which ability he's doing, because in the case of P4S, the boss will either have a glowing cloak or a glowing sword. If the boss is doing a glowing sword, that means that you have to move and hug a wall as much as possible to avoid the damage from the sword. If the boss is waving a cloak, that means that you have to move and stand in front of the boss, because the boss is going to push you and you don't want to get pushed outside of the arena because you'll die. So all of these things are taken into consideration when you are, when they're developing these encounters. If you have an add-on that just straight up tells you, move position 1 sword. If the add-on just tells you this the second the boss starts doing the mechanic, right? You don't even have to think. So you're just like, okay, so it's a sword and I have to move here. Okay, boop. You don't even have to think. That removes a significant portion of challenge if you're looking at the boss, interpreting the mechanic, reading, doing all these things. The add-on just tells you, move here, sword. Move here, cape. And it just solves the entire mechanic for you. You don't have to think at all. At that point, you're going to be like, wow, that was pretty easy. Yeah, no shit. Because you didn't actually do it. The add-on did it for you. And that's why I have a problem with add-ons. And I'm giving you this easy example of P4S. I could probably give you a million examples of World of Warcraft if I was currently raiding in WoW. But in WoW, it's pretty much mandatory because they've been fighting this battle against add-ons for years now. And it makes the game significantly worse because of it. And not even just add-ons, there's straight up weak auras that solve most mechanics for you in World of Warcraft. And I do think that is a significant problem, which is why I said, delete the APIs. There you go. Now you have to actually think. It's that simple. It's literally that simple.
World of Warcraft is not alone in this. In fact, it's a widespread discussion that happens across every MMOs. And wouldn't you know it, within the past couple of weeks, that fire has been lit under Final Fantasy XIV as well. So it's worth talking about add-ons and their usage because, once again, in most cases, gamers have very clearly decided on which camp they're in, but it's just not that easy a situation. So, in World of Warcraft, it's a case of we're watching these teams on payroll, like they're actively paying these people, usually 3 or 4 people, to come to the World First events, and that means they are considered as important as everybody else who is there at those events, and their job is to make add-ons. They do other tasks besides.
This actually happens in the Race to World First of World of Warcraft. There's the players, and then there's 3 add-on developers. Oh my fucking God, dude. It's like, I 1,000% disagree. If you cannot solve the raid without having people to develop add-ons for you, then A, you either aren't good enough, or B, actually no, I should say A, the encounter is poorly designed, because that's probably going to be the main reason. Let's just be completely honest. The encounter is poorly designed, poorly balanced, poorly whatever. Or B, your team's not good enough. It's just that simple. These are the 2 reasons. Period. End of. No more discussion.
But when you'll see those leaders, be it Max or be it Scripe, drop into different channels and say, this is what we need. And while that's happening, other people, these tech analysts, are also letting people know what they need. And these teams scurry and busy and get to work creating very specific weak auras or whatever it might be to then make the fights easier for the guys. If they get a nice diagram of where they should go, if you look at the jailer, it pre-plans which bomb holes you should be going in so there's no confusion. And in many cases, they're building extra boss mods that not only say this mechanic is happening soon, but also giving warnings to individuals. You need to be in your position in 10 seconds. Things like that are very commonplace when it comes to the most difficult of difficult fights. But Final Fantasy XIV has also run into this recently. The new Ultimate fight, the new Dragon Song Ultimate that just took place in Final Fantasy XIV was and is widely considered the most difficult fight Final Fantasy XIV has ever managed to produce, and took the best of the best of the best just as long to kill the one fight as it did for a lot of big races in the MMO space. Now, during the streaming of this, people could hear that add-ons were in use. Simple add-ons that were giving sort of vocal notifications as to when things were coming or which way to face, things like that. And people did not like that because Final Fantasy XIV is well known for being an add-on free game. Quotation marks, add-on free game. And what people are really talking about, of course, is boss mods. You don't want it to do with boss mods. Final Fantasy XIV goes to massive lengths to make sure that what's happening is visually shown to you. The boss will raise his right arm if he's going to destroy the right-hand side of the room. He will turn to you if he's going to target something. There will be icons and indicators trying to show you what is supposed to be happening. Now, of course, in the most difficult fights, there's so many things going on, such as trios of mechanics, that can be very difficult to work through, hence where the difficulty in Final Fantasy XIV fights comes from. Very complicated things all happening at once where lots of players need to coordinate in a very specific way. And seeing add-ons in use got a lot of people upset.
As it should. I think people should. I mean, here's the thing, right? I would get upset if I was participating in the race. If I was participating in the race, I would probably be upset. If I'm not participating in the race, which I'm not, and I probably never will, I don't care. Do whatever the hell you want. Just if you get banned, it's in the terms of service. Don't do it. It's that simple. Them's the rules. Like, that's the end of the discussion. They specifically say, don't do it. And streamers, and you guys want to know something funny that I don't know if people are aware or not. But you guys know how a lot of times people will stream in 14 and they'll have like ACT plastered all over their screen. Like, first and foremost, I'm not against ACT. We have some people that parse within my group. I like ACT as a parsing tool because it allows me to see when I get better with my rotation and all of that stuff. I'm not against ACT. But the reason I want to bring up this ACT thing is because by default, ACT doesn't even show up in your window. Like, you actually have to manually drag ACT, because I've installed ACT once. I'm not using it right now. But you actually have to drag ACT into your game window if you want to show it on your stream. By default, if you have two screens, which most streamers do, it shows up on your second screen. Yes. ACT equals Advanced Combat Tracker. Yeah, I think that's the denomination of it or whatever. But it's like, I'm not even against ACT. If you want to parse yourself, I feel like the game itself should provide those tools. I feel like the game itself should provide players with parsing tools. I know that this is a bit of a hot button topic, because a lot of players, they don't want to be measured in terms of their damage and whatnot. And it's like, look, I think there's already rules in place that prevent harassment and all of that stuff. And we've seen that definitely Creative Business Unit 3 is good at enforcing anything that involves harassment. They're very good at like getting people banned or suspended or whatever whenever it comes to harassment cases. I don't think that ACT is going to cause like a wave of harassment to happen to players, but I do think that parsing is important when you're reaching savage content and ultimate content. Having said that, what people are doing with ACT includes callouts, and that I'm 1,000% against. For the reasons that we've talked about at the start of this video. Callouts do not fail. There's no human element in a callout, and they drastically reduce the difficulty. It's that simple. It's just that simple. You can't tell me it doesn't reduce the difficulty. It does. Part of the difficulty of these things is being able to master doing several things at the same time. That's why people call it progging. You're progressing through a fight one step at a time. And it takes a long time to progress through those fights. Now, one of the reasons why these races aren't official is, at least that's one of the reasons why I think these races aren't official, is because people go crazy with them and they adopt extremely unhealthy lifestyles. The way that I look at it is they should actually make these races official and give players like a window to practice. You can only practice during these times. So it's like you make the ultimate during the race. The ultimate is only available during these time windows. And this is how long you get to practice. And actually limit the time window until the race is over. After the race is over, then it's like, okay, now the ultimate's just available all the time. It's weird that it has to be like that, but I feel like that is the only way to do it, because otherwise you know that somebody's going to die. Because somebody's going to go at it at such an unhealthy fucking rhythm that they'll die. Because let's face it, MMO players are not the sanest people in the fucking world. I know. I used to play an MMO as my only game for a long amount of time. And I used to stay up all night, all the fucking time, playing the game in unhealthy ways. We're just, when it comes to MMOs, we're just not the sanest people. Okay, it's just that simple. So if somebody puts a challenge in front of us and they're like, okay, it's race the world first, go raid like 24/7 for 2 weeks, people fucking do it. And somebody's going to have a heart attack, somebody's going to get a blood clot and die. So instead of that, they'd be like, okay, you can raid today for like a usual work day is, well, usual work day is very, very different depending on who you ask, of course. But let's go with the reasonable route. You got 8 hours. Here's an 8-hour time slot during which you can prog. And after this 8-hour time slot, you can't prog anymore. You have to go to sleep. You have to go take care of the rest of your life shit. All that. Here's 8 hours a day that you can do it. And the thing is only available during those 8 hours, and then you can't queue for it anymore until the next day. And it stays like that until the race is over. Like, that's the only way that you can do it. Race, is that a thing? You get anything for winning it? Yeah, you get bragging rights. Do the console players have access to add-ons? No, they don't. which is another reason why you shouldn't have add-ons to begin with. And I know that Pyromancer went on a rant where part of his argument was like, man, fuck console players, doesn't give a fuck. And it's like, well, I don't think that's really fair, but sure, whatever. It's like, look, I've played both on PC and on console, which is when, you know, I think that the console experience is fine. And there's people even out there that wonder, like, oh, but is it even viable to raid Savage on console? Yes, it's perfectly viable. If anybody out there was ever wondering, is it viable to raid Savage on console? Yes, it's perfectly viable. It's not hard at all. As a matter of fact, I would argue for some roles, it's probably easier to do Savage on console because the gamepad setup is so well optimized. It might even be easier in some instances to play on a gamepad than it is to play on a keyboard, because you're able to access both movement and abilities in a way that I personally find superior to mouse and keyboard. So yeah. A company has to keep the integrity of their game intact. And here's another thing that I think a lot of people don't know. This game is crossplay. So like I can play both on my console and on my PC with the same character, and I can be on my console playing with people on PC.
Have a nice weekend.
RipX Doc, thank you very much for being grossing with us 51 months. Tip of the hat. Appreciate the support. Thank you. Thank you very much. Silver Nitro bragging rights. Those useless, or am I too much of a boomer to brag about? Dude, come on. It's like you think what's the reward for winning a race? Is it a gold medal? I mean, yes, there's a gold medal, but in reality, it's obviously the acclaim that comes from being the one who won the race. It's the same thing. Mods are great, but not in multiplayer games. Co-op is fine, in my opinion. These add-ons just simply mess with the difficulty of the game. That's the problem.
So, Yoshi P made a statement. And their statement remains as it has been for a long time. We don't endorse the use of third-party add-ons. We can't specifically check if you're using some of these things, but we don't endorse them. And this isn't just a case of boss mods, but it also extends to the fact that they don't like people using damage meters, because often people wield them as a weapon, and we're going to come back to that in a second. But anything that should make fights even...
I've never seen damage meters wielded as a weapon in Final Fantasy XIV. I haven't seen this happen once. Not once have I seen ACT being wielded as a weapon. I have. Well, when it's between R static after after the healer video. After the healer video, and people went to my logs because they were mad about me telling healers to heal in fucking dungeons. They were mad about it. And they were like, great parsing, motherfucker. Great parsing on normal telling me how to heal. No, but it's like, you know what I mean? Like, if I'm in the game and somebody's parsing, I've never had somebody, oh, your damage sucks, bro.
Even easier, because they're obviously very worried about going to where World of Warcraft is right now.
Exactly.
Add-ons. And recently, in the interview with Asmongold and Ian Hazakostas, they brought up the subject of add-ons as well. It's a very hot topic in both communities, and that's because it affects everybody differently.
And let me tell you right now, you do not want to go. I've said this before. You do not want to go where this road leads. Everybody in 14 right now that is going like, Kekbot callouts is fine, or whatever. There's an add-on that also shows you the exact range of like certain AoEs before they even show up on screen and shit like that, showing you the safe spots. And there's even an add-on that does your rotation for you. I saw this in a video the other day. It blew my fucking mind. There's just straight up an add-on, does your rotation for you. The only thing you had to do was like WASD to the right positions, and the add-on would tell you what those positions were. So there's just straight up add-ons that literally play the game for you. And let me tell you, you do not want to go to where that road leads. As someone with experience in World of Warcraft, you do not want to go where that road leads. You really don't. You really fucking don't. Trust me. Okay?
the thing that we kind of know, right? I think any logical person can kind of see what FF14 is trying to avoid, and on the vice versa, a lot of World of Warcraft casual players look at something like the Race to World First. They're hearing about things that are like teams of people making add-ons, and a lot of people will look at a World of Warcraft UI and go, what the hell is happening? Like 60% of the screen is add-ons giving me information.
Yeah, exactly. You want to play the fucking UI or you want to play the fucking game? Right now in 14, you can still play the fucking game. You keep fucking around, you're going to be playing the fucking UI instead.
I want to play a game like that. I want to play a game that's nice and clean and open. Certainly if these communities are interspersed. Now, wielding as a weapon. This is where we have to set the foundation for how widespread this thing goes. Because when people talk about add-ons, they're kind of using a blanket statement. And some add-ons are good. Let's just face facts. Some add-ons are good. Not everything provided by the game developer is perfect. We could all agree on that everything is perfect.
Any add-on that you make that does not impact combat, not combat, that does not impact encounter difficulty. Any add-on that does not impact counter difficulty, whatever. You want to like enhance your character's booba? Don't care. You want to make your character shinier with G-Shade? Don't care. There was an add-on that people were talking about, how you would remove a mana bar if you're playing as a warrior. Makes perfect sense, right? Don't care. I think those should just be allowed. Just straight up, just actually draw a fucking line in the sand and go like, if it affects encounter difficulty in any way, and I mean that literally in any way, if it shaves 1 second off of the encounter, you're banned. If, however, it's something where, I want to be able to monitor my buffs better. I want to be able to monitor my party buffs better. I want to be able to track the cooldowns of party buffs or something like that. I think that's fine. Whatever. The moment it affects tracking of party buffs should be done in game. Because, again, console players can't get access to that, right? And that is something that can be an optimization thing. Or maybe the developers don't actually want you to have access to that information. That could also be the case. But basically, that's the thing, right? The moment it affects encounter difficulty, ban them, get rid of them, done. If it does not, if it's just like cosmetic nonsense, I say nonsense, whatever. If it's cosmetic features, if it's stuff that lets you modify your UI slightly in ways that you can't do it with the default add-ons, but doesn't affect encounter difficulty, I'm fine with it. The moment it touches encounter difficulty, ban them, get rid of them, boom, done.
I have been attacked with this. And I'm not the only one. Because in FF14, no third-party stuff is allowed. However, there's a lot of stuff that's kind of good, and it's just not in the game. Now, I was attacked because I had an add-on installed. In my history of playing Final Fantasy XIV, I have used one add-on. And it was a simple add-on that had nothing to do with encounters, nothing to do with trivializing anything. It
Chat bubbles is fine. Chat bubbles is perfectly fine.
Was chat bubbles. Chat bubbles. I don't like looking at chat in a side box on the corner of my game. I often don't notice it. My attention is usually focused on the screen as a whole, and the chat box is kind of unnecessary to me in a lot of ways, and that's how I've played MMOs for probably 10 to 12 years. And the reason for that is simple. Often, I'm in voice comms with people. If I'm going to talk to people, I talk to them. I literally use my mouth. And if people are trying to do something that's important to me, I can see a chat bubble. World of Warcraft has chat bubbles. It's never been a problem. And therefore, I can see not only who's talking to me, but where they're stood. And that makes me much more engaged with the people I'm surrounded by.
I actually hope that they bring chat bubbles to the game. I never realized that before this, all of this nonsense, I never realized why I have a harder time keeping up with chat in 14 than I've had in World of Warcraft in the past. But the reason is chat bubbles, because in WoW, I would just look at chat bubbles and see when somebody was talking to me, and in here, you can't.
Final Fantasy XIV does not have chat bubbles. There are a few reasons behind this, but it made me annoyed, frustrated, because often people would be, if I was going into a group setting or something like that, a lot of people would be saying things simultaneously. And I can't watch what they're doing, especially if they're doing some slight RP thing or something more interesting, is looking away and going on there. I just personally don't like it. And I think it's way more fun when you can see people doing an action and talking at the same time on the screen. So I was like, God, I miss chat bubbles. It was of all the things I missed after playing World of Warcraft for over a decade, the thing that I missed the most was chat bubbles. When, especially with so many people around. So people are like, yeah, you can get a plugin that makes that work. And I raised the questions like, isn't that not allowed? It's like, look, this is how this kind of works. Damage meters exist in Final Fantasy XIV. They do. We have logs for Final Fantasy XIV. We have lots of stuff. We have things that make the auction house better. Because you've got to remember, FF14 was designed around consoles. So a lot of stuff doesn't really make itself more conducive to a PC environment sometimes. So there are add-ons and stuff that make this easier. There are add-ons to take better pictures, right? There are add-ons to make things just a little bit more convenient. But generally speaking, most of the community is okay with the fact that there's no damage meters, or if you have a damage meter, you don't use that as a weapon. Now, after this statement last week, things have been used as a weapon, especially towards streamers, because people can see that we're using add-ons. Now, I just instantly uninstalled mine. I just figured, look, my take on this is simple. In terms of the FF14 stuff, and we'll come back to WoW.
This was the Pyromancer one.
If it's something they agree with, they're going to add it to the game. Now, I may use these things in the future because they're clearly not what FF14 was attacking, but I have a bad experience, let's just say, with thinking things are okay and them not being. I have been banned in the past, as is well documented, when I thought things were like, oh, okay, they clearly don't care about this thing, and so we'll go ahead and do it. But I'm going to read the what's happening with the player base. I'm going to see if this kind of moves on, because as far as I'm concerned, and I think Squeenix probably agrees with me on this, chat bubbles ain't shit. They're not what they're targeting. Their post describing this problem with add-ons was specifically around encounters and making the game easy.
The problem is that streamers really did, and there's a lot of streamers that got fucking brazen about it. They did. There's a lot of streamers that got really brazen about it, and they're just like, no, fuck it, I'm going to use ACT. What you going to do about it? You going to ban me? And then they got fucking banned. It really is. It's like, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to ban me? And they ban them, and they're like, hey, what the fuck? Why'd you go and ban me? What the fuck? I mean, people really did get brazen about it. Clearly, nobody gives a fuck if somebody is using chat bubbles. But if you're like blatantly using callouts and other cheat mods in a race to world first, like, what the fuck do you expect? What exactly do you expect? Come on. Get real. Like, look, I don't want anybody to get banned. I don't want anybody to get banned. Just like I don't want anybody to like have a car accident or anything like that. But guess what? You run a red light, you might get into a fucking car accident. It's that simple. That's the reason why the light is red. Green means go, red means stop. It's like some of these people, it's like they go into the freeway in the wrong direction, and then they're like, why the fuck's everybody driving in the wrong direction? Oh shit.
Easier in some way, especially when they're trying to produce these most difficult fights. What they don't want is something like weak auras coming in. But, of course, it's been wielded as a weapon. Several streamers have been attacked and reported constantly and taken down and had their accounts banned. People who took part in the Ultimate have had their accounts taken down. Now, you may agree or disagree with that, and that's not my position here. I'm looking to talk about add-ons in general, and then coming back to World of Warcraft. So that's what's happened, and people are always going to do that, especially if they don't like that streamer, especially if they disagree with them, or they say something they don't like. They're going to wield this as a weapon, and we have seen that happen, and that's not great. That's not great, is to have this kind of attitude of attack, 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 when it's clearly not what this was designed around, and they're basically asking you to use common logical sense in these situations. Over in World of Warcraft, a lot of people after the last Race World First were just like, let's flat out ban add-ons. Let's talk about that for a second. World of Warcraft was designed from day one with add-on usage in mind, similar to...
Video is quiet compared to me. It's like, I haven't maxed out. Preach just doesn't speak very loudly. Like, this actually does not affect these volumes here. They don't actually affect anything on the stream. It's like I can boost it, but that can be a problem. I can do like a gain filter, but It's not something I really want to use. I'm gonna give you guys 3 extra decibels. See if he sounds better like that.
Many games that you'll find on.
It's still not that much. It's almost nothing. I'm gonna give you guys a couple more. I don't want to go too loud. Here's 10 decibels.
Steam that endorse workshops and things like that. And
is that too loud?
Who can play Skyrim anymore unmodded? Somebody out there will, and somebody does play World of Warcraft with 0 add-ons. Somebody everywhere does that thing. But
are they really playing World of Warcraft if they don't have any add-ons?
But the game is designed with it in mind. The standard WoW UI has gotten better, and they're making more improvements in Dragonflight, but let's face facts, it's kind of dog shit. Right? It's kind of dog shit. And the reason it's dog shit is because they expect you to use add-ons to alter it and change it to however you want it to be. And they encourage that behavior. Now, it's not to say World of Warcraft hasn't taken a stance when people cross the line. That has happened many, many times. We all know about AVR, or if you don't, AVR in Wrath of the Lich King, which literally projected textures of where you should stand to avoid mechanics onto the game. I'm not joking. That add-on existed.
You see those?
That add-on existed, which is like, here's a big red circle on the floor. Stand there and you're fine.
And they have an add-on very much like that in 14 right now.
And you'll never get hit by this mechanic. Obviously, that massively trivialized so many encounters because this add-on was able to read where projectiles were going, where nasty things were going to happen, and say, this is the safe space if you go and stand.
This was actually an executable outside of the game, if I remember correctly. Wasn't this an additional executable that you had to run that wasn't even like a regular add-on? Because I don't think there were APIs that tied into this. Or am I wrong? I could be mistaking it. But I seem to remember that there was an add-on that was like an actual executable outside of the game.
There, and we'll literally put a big circle on the floor. That's where you go and stand, and you avoid all this horrible things that are happening. And people were overcoming bosses they should have no hope of defeating. Compared to saying that Wing Buffet is coming in 10 seconds, or the big explosion is coming in 20 seconds, that is far beyond that line. A boss mod will tell you when things are happening, or when things happen, you have a certain nasty debuff. But what it's not doing is saying, like, everybody go here, and you could literally trace a map where everybody needed to go in order to avoid ever getting hit by these mechanics. And that was mad. So they drew a line. If we go back to Star Augur, we know that Blizzard decided that they had to cut off parts of the API again because people trivialized the hardest mechanic in that fight. The Grand Conjunction, where you had to pair up with people with certain icons above your head.
Given the choice, players will optimize the fun out of a video game. Ain't that the sad truth?
But they had add-ons that would simply say, you go to the big blue square and you are fine. And everything will be fine and nobody's going to get hit. And you're going to win and overcome the most difficult part of this fight. This fight is entirely designed around this mechanic. It uses area denial to make this mechanic even harder. And if you trivialize that mechanic using add-ons, then the fight is worthless. And now we have to rethink, and this is the important thing, we have to rethink how we do fights in the future because we can no longer use this type of mechanic because you guys are going to make it super easy. So does that mean all add-ons should be destroyed? Absolutely not. That's crazy. That's crazy. Just like there's
all combat add-on. Well, maybe not combat add-on. You guys get it. Anything that affects the challenge level of a raid encounter or a dungeon encounter, anything that fucks with that, yes, it should be destroyed, should be obliterated, grinded, mushed, sent into oblivion. So that the developers don't have to resort to overcomplicated fucking bullshit to the point where then you need the add-on in order to overcome the mechanic.
Should be some flexibility about more stricter rules over in FF14. There's a fine line to be had. There is always going to be that, but it's not an easy line to find, in my opinion. That's where it comes down to, is clearly stuff I'm doing and other people are doing enhances their game experience without any negative effect happening on the design of the game or implementation. But people are right, is like, that makes it so that you can keep kind of pushing that and then making them come back. And frankly, the FF14 devs can't be fucking bothered to deal with that, and I don't blame them. They would rather say, look, we don't endorse any of this, and if we see something we don't like, we're just going to crack down on it and keep it that way, because it makes our lives infinitely easier. And if there's something you guys are all doing, maybe we can implement it into the game ourselves, which is what I'm hoping for with things like chat bubbles, because it makes our experience so much better and is entirely innocent. That's my stance on it. You might disagree and say they said no. They said no. They did say no. I don't have it installed.
Xanther, thank you very much for rescuing us for 10 months.
Because I'm not risking getting banned. There's just no purpose
support.
to it.
Thank you.
Over in World of Warcraft, can you imagine playing that game with no add-ons? Now, some of you will be like, well, I play with no add-ons, but I'm going to say your experience is way shitter than what I experienced. That's the fact. Like, having things... Like, especially considering a lot of the games since day one, this is not a modern thing. This isn't a Dragonflight thing. This isn't a Shadowlands thing. Are absolutely designed with the very fast-paced, very proactive and reactive gameplay that is in World of Warcraft. Far, far, far quicker than what you'll find in FF14 is designed because you should know these things are happening, that horrible spells are casting, being able to mark mobs very quickly in massive packs because you can pull extraordinarily large things with huge amounts of things going on. This is just in dungeons and things like that because they kind of expect that you're going to have something going on. Now, personally, I do think WeCores go too far. I'm not on one side or the other here. UI add-ons, all that kind of stuff is fine. I personally would love to see some fights that have stuff like this disabled to see how they do. I'm trying to put together something where we'll see a raid with 0 add-ons. Like, how do people perform under those pressures? Because it creates all sorts of weird situations where the race or people interested in the race are saying it's not competitive because people just can't have add-on creators on standby. We don't have a payroll to make that happen. But at the same time, do I want to see things like auction house mods disabled? Not really. Like, the auction house is better, but it's still not great. Do I really want to see my UI disappear? No. And as rightly pointed out by Ian in the interview with Asmon, is that if there are things that they have to disable in order to make certain add-ons not work, which have a ripple effect. If we disable this part of the API...
Don't care. I'm be real, don't care. I don't care. Fuck it. It is worth the sacrifice. If for some reason, we have to turn off this thing and now these threat bars don't work, which threat bars is something extremely important for me as a tank. Threat plates or something like that, right? Because we changed this thing, threat plates don't work anymore. It's fine. This is potentially one of the most important things that I change in the game instantly because the default plates on mobs. Just thinking about it, my lunch comes back up, right? So it's like, this is something very important for me. If you deleting something breaks that, too fucking bad. It's worth it. Better than people being forced to use add-ons, which is fucking stupid.
Which is the code that people use to get add-on information and then relay that back to the player. If we disable part of that, then no longer do you have things like a slightly better health bar.
Too fucking bad. Don't care. Don't care. I'll live with it. It is what it is. Like, look, you have to take a hard stance somewhere, and my hard stance is there. The moment it affects the difficulty of a raid encounter, a dungeon encounter, anything, out the door it goes. Out the door it goes, yeeted and deleted, gone. That simple.
Is that what you really want? Because I imagine a lot of people don't. It's a very fine line and no easy answer. And it's something that I think all devs need to keep an eye on. And these blanket wipeout
The answer is very easy. The moment it affects difficulty, get rid of it.
Statements that I'm seeing from people is like, it should just be a flat out no. I totally disagree with. It's not something that can just be destroyed in a heartbeat and then...
Yes, it can.
Everybody's happy. Because you're going to upset
I don't care if they're not happy.
And I don't think that's necessary. What you need to do...
I don't care if they're not happy. If somebody's not happy, like, let's put it like this, okay? Imagine that AVR, whatever the fuck it was called, was still a thing. In order to turn it off, in order to turn off the API that gave AVR its information, also meant you can no longer have customizable, what are they called? Frames. You can no longer have customizable frames. Too fucking bad. Too fucking bad. Get rid of it. Fucking get rid of it. Too fucking bad.
Is probably take a proactive approach in this. FF14 for me is too hands-on. WoW is too hands-off. There's a place in the middle that can maybe make this work. But if we're at the point in WoW, which we are now, where you're literally having to pay teams of people to try and nullify mechanics, because that's what they're doing. They're actively trying to make mechanics not a problem.
Exactly.
That kind of sucks.
Yeah,
because they've proven, and I think Holondrus would be the best example here. Holondrus didn't require any add-ons. The raid leaders were practically useless there. It was a game of personal play. They can absolutely design fights like that in World of Warcraft, and they can make it work. Can they do them all the time? No, they can't do them all the time. WoW isn't acceptable to that. It wouldn't be a great time if everything was just like, okay, now we just need to carry bombs or whatever. Like, there's a limited scope in that environment to make that work. They would have to redesign how the bosses work, like animation-wise. You say FF14 does it. FF14 bosses work entirely differently. They work entirely differently and designed around the idea from the get-go, from day one, that there's no add-ons involved. World of Warcraft is not like that. Like, you can't visually, like, they can't even make the jailer walk properly.
It's not like that by choice. Like, let's just be real here. It's not like that by choice. It's their choice to allow these add-ons to keep working. After the Asmongold interview, we know it's their choice. They're making a conscious decision. We let these add-ons exist. Very well. Then, you know, all of these things that Preach is saying is like, well, it's designed like this, so there's limitations. It's like that by fucking choice. It is their choice to do it like this. Choose not to do it like this. You get paid for this. $15 a month by every single player in the fucking game. Choose not to do that. Simple.
Right? He's like slides across the floor. Let alone can he give very, very distinct animations as to what he's doing without everything being a slow build-up, which is not conducive to that game. So there's many arcs here. I'd love to see your thoughts on it. Personally, there's a middle ground here. There's a middle ground. And yeah, part of it is selfish. Of course I want chat bubbles back in FF14, and I wouldn't mind not seeing ridiculous. I wouldn't see raids come to a stop while add-ons get made, so we can get around this mechanic. Like, there's a fine line in the middle. But I'd love to see your thoughts on it, guys. Let me know what you think. Bye-bye.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's a good discussion to have. I think it's an important discussion to have at this point in time, because we are at a point where several communities are basically, you know, both communities are looking at this and figuring out, okay, what is acceptable, what isn't acceptable, right? And this is a discussion that needs to happen. We need to have this discussion now. Do we want to have the convenience of add-ons, knowing full well that eventually you're just going to be playing your fucking UI as opposed to actually be playing the game? Like, you get to a point where you don't even look at the boss. Like, I'll tell you guys what, as someone that came from World of Warcraft, one of the most revolutionary things that I've experienced in 14 was actually having to look at a boss. I was like, I have to look at the boss? Why? Why doesn't the cast bar just tell me everything? Why isn't there like a list of things that I've had? Because like literally the first add-on that I installed every time that I played World of Warcraft is fucking DBM. So that I could see the list of abilities of shit that's coming my way. Because the game doesn't tell you. So when I got to mechanics in 14 where I had to look at the boss, I was like, I have to look at the boss? What? So look at the level of disconnect that I had from the game from playing World of Warcraft for so many years that I couldn't even fathom the idea of looking at a boss for anything other than the position that the boss was in. Like when I did that boss, the 5.3 boss, the Seat of Sacrifice, right? When I did the Seat of Sacrifice, and I was like, wait, I have to look at the swirly balls that are around the boss's sword? What? That's crazy. So yeah, it's, you know. But anyways, leave a like. I think like I said, I think this is a very important discussion to be had at this point. I linked the video for you guys.